Okay, boys and girls, so we're going to read The Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. She did the pictures and she wrote the words. So once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank under the root of a very big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down to the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mr. McGregor. Uh-oh. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I'm going out." Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket from her umbrella and went through the woods to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First he ate some lettuce and some French beans, and then ate some radishes. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. So there he is, guys. See, he squeezed under the fence, and he went exactly where Mom said not to go. It's not a good idea. But around the end of a cucumber frame, who should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages and the other shoe among the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and ran faster. So he might have gotten away if it had not, unfortunately, run into a gooseberry net and got caught by a large button on Peter Rabbit's jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows who flew to him in great excitement and begged him to try to free himself. Okay. Mr. McGregor found a sieve, which he intended to put on top of Peter, but Peter wiggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him. So there he is, and he was trying to catch Peter Rabbit, but he didn't. Peter rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a watering can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not been for so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath the flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. Suddenly, Peter sneezed. Ka-choo! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time. He tried to catch Peter, who jumped out a window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright. He had no idea which way to go. He was also very damp from sitting in the can. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity, lippity, and not very fast, looking all around. So you guys could see the pictures. Okay. Oops. Let's get the next page. He found a door on a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone step, carrying peas and beans to her family in the woods. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it's best to go without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. He went back toward the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a scratch, scratch, scratch. Peter scurried underneath the bushes, but soon As nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. First thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing the onions. His back was turned to Peter, and beyond him was the gate. So if you guys can see here, here's Peter. There's Mr. McGregor, but he has to get all the way over here to the gate to get out of the garden. Peter never stopped running. Oh, wait. Sorry. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go along a straight walk behind some blackberry bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him out of the corner of his eye, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the woods beyond the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes as a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Oh, so Peter's really scared. He keeps running though. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him until he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down on the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole, and he shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in 2 weeks. So there she is, and she's wondering why he lost his clothes twice. That evening, Peter was not very well. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea. She gave a dose of it to Peter, 1 tablespoon, to be taken at bedtime, she said, but Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. The end. I miss you guys. Hope everyone's doing really well.